Da da da. Hi, I'm Darren, here to show you how to start your own QQQ application. We're going to clone our QQQ App Starter project on GitHub, and that'll give you just what you need to get started with your own project. Management UI for your own local database. Should be about 5 minutes, so let's get going. We'll start here at github.com/kingsrook/QQQ App Starter. We've got a nice README file here. It's going to tell you some of the prerequisites. Java 17 is what we've built on. Maven versions, you'll need someone to get the project from Git, of course. There's a setting here outside of the scope of this video that talks about how to get a token from GitHub that you will need to put in your Maven settings file so that you can pull the QQQ jars from our Maven repository. And then the last prereq you'll need, that's just going to be a database, MySQL, that you can access from your Mac. Then we'll get into the first steps. Pretty much everything we do here is going to be in this README file. But first thing we're going to do is get the URL of this repo, and we're going to paste that into IntelliJ to start a new project. Before we do that, here's just a real quick look at the database we'll be connecting to. We're going to call it the Home Manager app, and it's got a meals table. So let's go ahead then to the File menu and do a new project from version control. We paste in our URL there. Let's go ahead and give it a name, Home Manager. And perfect, here it is. Got the same README we were just looking at, and look at that, we've completed our first step. We've cloned the repo. We've even got it open in IntelliJ. Let's go ahead and do step 2. It's optional, but it's nice to make the project a little bit more of your own. Put in your own domain name here, whatever yours happens to be, and Home Manager. I think that's our project that we're doing for this demo. So we've done that. We might want to go ahead and also rename the package here. Definitely an optional step, but nice to just make the code a little bit more your own. The next thing that we need to do, though, is to create our env file with our database settings. So we can copy the template out of here. We don't need this last one unless we want to buy a license for the Material UI Pro. But what we can do is create a new .env file here and paste in these RDBMS settings. That's our relational database manager. We're using MySQL as the vendor. Ours happens to be running on localhost. The default port. Home manager was our database name. I've got my username there, and let me just grab from the console over here the password that I assigned for myself. So perfect. So now that's set up. Let's go back again to the README, and we've got our env file. So now we get to edit just a little bit of code to tell QQQ a little bit more about the table in our database that we're going to be managing. We're going to do that in the Starter App Metadata Provider class. Let's go ahead and open that up. It's got a method for defining the branding for the app, logos, names, authentication. We're going to be using a fully anonymous module. Here's a method that's going to be reading those env settings we just built for setting up your database connection. Here we go, define sample table. So our table, we know it's not a sample, we know it's our meals table. So let's go ahead and rename that method. Inside the QQQ table metadata object that's being built here, let's go ahead and give that a name that matches the concept. Down here for the backend details, we'll put in the actual name as the database knows it. And then let's just make sure that the code knows about all the actual columns in our table. So we've got an ID, we've got a time, a date, we've got a meal type ID. Let's put proper types on these. That one's a time, that one's a date. Meal type ID is an integer. These guys should be editable. Meal type ID. So one issue we're going to have with meal type ID, we like to use names for QQQ objects that are camel case style. However, the database is going to need to know the underscored style version of that. We do have some convenience methods to infer those, but we'll just go ahead and type this one out by hand for this simple case. The last change we're going to need to make is in our define sample app method, which kind of defines the organization of our tables and everything else. We're just going to need to tell it the new name that we put on our sample table. It's actually our meal table. So with those pretty quick code changes, we should be able to now go to our starter app Javelin server and debug that server, because we always like to debug instead of running, right? Yeah. Compile for a second here, and there we go. Up and running. The Javelin server is listening on localhost port 8000. Let's drag this over. Here's what we've got, right? We've got our sample app, again, that sample logo, and our meal table. Those are the columns we defined. Look at that. We can pull up any one of these. We can edit them. Lunch was really exciting that day. So we can put an exclamation point on that. We can create a new meal. Let's say it's dessert. It might be desert. There's no real way to tell. And let's just put in some of these additional details. We ate dessert today, and it was meal type 4. Ooh, meal type 4. That looks like a good challenge for the next project to change that into a possible value, right? A drop-down menu. But hey, look at that. Was it 5 minutes? It was just a little more than 5 minutes. We have got our QQQ app cloned from GitHub and up and running. It's a management UI, just like that. QQQ. Thanks, everybody.